The next session is about women in film, and we've got some really amazing female colorists from around the world, 3 great people. I got to say, I'm a little disappointed that there aren't more women throughout this whole thing, but you know, I get it. It's still a male-dominated industry in many ways. As Warren said, I worked with him a long, long time ago, and things have got a lot better since then. But yeah, we've still got a ways to go. So yeah, I'm excited to do this.
Very good, very good. And as I mentioned earlier, next year, 2021, I think CSI is going to work hard on diversity. So not just women, but also people of color. And we have a really good session on that coming up later. In fact, people of color are even less represented than women. But yeah, it is good to see a good balance of ladies in the various screens here. I'm just stepping through. We've got 4. Well, at least on my screen, I've got 4 pages of gallery view, and I see Marlena waving at me. Hi, Marlene.
Hello. How are you?
Good. I'm still awake.
Yeah,
Cynthia.
It's really great to see so many people all over the world here. It's really good to see.
Hi, women.
Hi.
There we go. So I'm going to step back, actually, Sarah, and
okay.
And feel free to spotlight as many women as you like. But there are some great names on your panel, so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. Yeah. So great. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Yeah, and as I think I said earlier, but maybe everyone wasn't on board, when I first started working a long time ago, there weren't even colorists. There were telecine operators. I think Kevin probably remembers those days. And
I do, yeah.
I know Warren does.
Pretty much had to be an engineer in those days to get started. When I was one of the first colorists not to be an engineer. So
yeah, and you had to know a bit about film as well. I remember I was always really terrified to actually handle the film. I was so nervous about actually handling negative. I just couldn't do it. So I failed as a telecine operator. But anyway, let's introduce. I'd love to introduce the people we've got here. We've got people, as I say, from all around the world. We've got CJ. CJ's in Melbourne, and she's been a colorist for over a decade. And she's born in New Zealand, lives in Melbourne. So hi, CJ, are you here?
Hello. Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hey, there you are. And we've got Andrea in LA, who's probably close to me. I'm in Burbank, LA, and Andrea's somewhere in LA. And she's done some amazing work. She's from Vancouver, lives in LA, worked on some great movies in Vancouver, like Chappie and Elysium. And recently got a new job, I think, in the last couple of days, working at Harbour Post here in LA. So
that's correct.
Onwards and upwards for Andrea. And then we have Junbin in Singapore, which is great. And you know, she's representing the Asian market, and that's fantastic. And it's probably a little, even if anything, a little more difficult over there, even to be a colorist. Yeah. So welcome to you.
Hi.
So yeah, I don't want to do all the talking. So I'm really interested to know how all these 3 people got into post-production. So maybe we'll start with CJ. How did you end up as a colorist?
Well, my background is actually from a very small town in New Zealand. I had no idea where to start in the film industry. So I went to film school to get a bit of an idea of how things worked. And we had literally like one day of lessons of color grading. This was would have been like 2006 that I was at uni. And yeah, I mean, I fell in love with color grading straight away. I already started to kind of color grade not only the other students' films, but even the teachers and lecturers' projects. But even through all that, no one really told me that that was a specialty job, that I could be a colorist, because, you know, it was so niche and I think so out of reach. That the lecturers never even mentioned it as a job. So I went into the industry as an all-round post person, and you know, those were the days of Final Cut Studio. So I just had that on my laptop, and I would go around and go into small production companies and pick up whatever work I could doing post. And it really probably only took about 6 months before word got out about this young post person who was obsessed with color grading. And people just started to, either I was a terrible editor or I was yeah, people just started to hire me as a colorist. And so that was all fully self-taught. I was using color and did that for a couple of years. And I eventually got a job at Digital Pictures, which became Deluxe in Melbourne. Spent a few years there doing, telecine. I was really lucky I got in when we were still using a lot of film. I think because I was in the commercial department, we probably did 90% of our projects were still shot on film, and I was doing, the dailies for film, for commercials, sorry. And so I was lucky to kind of get in at a big post facility there where I got to work with a bunch of senior colorists and have that training as well. Obviously having been self-taught in the beginning, but now I'm freelance. So I kind of stepped out of the big facilities, which we don't have a lot of, to be honest. Most of the people here in Melbourne, at least, and probably in all of Australia, are freelance.
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess, once telecine, you couldn't have a telecine in your living room, right? So it'd be a little harder to be freelance if you were still transferring film. But I think grading film gives you a great background, right? It gives you the understandings of the color science and stuff. So I think it's for those of us who still remember that's great. So let's move on to Andrea. I was really interested, Andrea. You were talking about your interest in, your background in photography and art and stuff. And I found that to be a common thread with some colorists, and particularly women, actually. So I'm really interested to hear how you think that influences your work as a colorist.
Yeah, I mean, I went into university right straight away after high school and was kind of mastering in art, and I didn't have any idea in terms of like what focus I was gonna have, and naturally in uni, like the first year is like the foundation year, so you kind of have to go through all the arts and paint and do sculpture and do pottery and also I got the chance to pick up a film camera, which was really cool. But I had sort of like narrowed in on being a photographer, thinking that that's what I was going to be going into school. And then within a couple of years, I switched my focus to film, just because the film program seemed to kind of call me. When I got out of university, I did not have a great experience trying to move into being a cinematographer or into that space. And so I, mostly just because it was like all unionized, it's really challenging as a woman to get that role and to get any mentorship in that role without it being kind of conflicted by other things. And so I found myself kind of going back to being a photographer, to be honest. That was kind of like an not easy, but easier job and career path to follow. So I shot on set, like stills on set, and then also just like editorial and, art photography and whatever I could do. And then somewhere along the way, I kind of realized I didn't want to be on set at all. So then I decided to be in post, and I just moved into editing and learned a lot of visual effects. I thought I was going to go into lighting, actually, because I really enjoyed that part of the process. And it was a visual effects producer that was interviewing me for an internship that said, looking at your reel, and I can just tell that you have this like polished kind of look, like everything looks kind of like put together, even though I can tell, like, I know you don't have a ton of experience, obviously, but like it looks really tight. So have you thought about being a colorist? And I didn't at that time, sort of like CJ said, like it wasn't like on my radar at all that was a job or something to pursue or understood. And there wasn't a digital color grading career really at that point. It was sort of just kind of coming up in digital intermediate. So I actually got a job at a digital to film transfer facility in Vancouver. At the time, it was pretty rare, but there was, of course, documentaries and films starting to be shot digitally that needed to actually end on film so they could go to festivals. And so I got a job at that company, and that company, which was called Digital Film Group, became Digital Film Central, and they actually opened their first sort of full end-to-end DI kind of independent boutique in Vancouver. And when they did that, I kind of just said, like, that's what I want. I want to sit over there. I want to sit in that chair. And it was kind of an interesting process because I wasn't a colorist, but they had to, of course, buy the system. And so I was essentially like the self-made intern or whatever, junior colorist at that point. And they had brought in Quantel Pablo, Baselight, Film Lights Baselight, and there was a Luster at the same time. And I got the chance to be trained on all three of those at the same time before actually knowing how to be a colorist, which was interesting. And then we chose to get a Baselight, and they installed it, and we had a senior colorist come in, and he worked with us for about 3 months and then left and went to another company. And we had a feature film on our plate for a few months from now. They were like, well, do you want to just do it? So I was really kind of in that good place and prepared to do it. And it was my first film that I did, was a sci-fi kind of independent sci-fi movie with the DP David Moxness, who we call Moxie. And he actually, I always kind of credit him for sort of training me to be a colorist, because I then became self-taught, like nobody taught me what to do. But that first feature, you know, I had graded other small things, obviously, but that was the first feature I'd done. He just taught me how to do that, you know, how to pace the sessions, how to light the image and everything. So from that, it was kind of history. You know, you get one and you get to do another one. And then after that, it goes on. I moved to LA in 2018. So I've been here for 2 years.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. There's definitely a lot of luck involved in these things, and being in the right place at the right time, and meeting the right people. But it's great. You've done some amazing work. Junbin, I'm sure Singapore has its own challenges and its own things you have to deal with. How did you get to where you are now?
I think like the rest of them, I had no idea like that it was a job. So I studied mass communication. So it's really more of a news degree than anything. But I had a chance to shoot my own stuff and it looked horrible. So I looked online for solutions to try and fix it. And I discovered the 3-way color corrector in Final Cut. And unfortunately, that was when half of the media outlets in Singapore closed down. Literally, we lost an entire network station. So I worked as a journalist, and I interviewed a whole bunch of technology people, like people from Da Vinci and Film Light, and I learned it that way. And it took me a while working as an editor, a video editor, and then a colorist, because the guy who trained me didn't actually enjoy what he was doing. It was very technical for him, but not aesthetic. So he was training me really to take over. And it's great because now I'm actually working with him on a film.
Great, that's amazing. Yeah, no, I think it's a really, you know, where we are now with being a colorist, it's a fascinating blend of art and technology and dealing with people, which is a huge part of it too. So I wonder if you think there are any advantages or disadvantages to being a woman in that role. I know, Andrea, you talked a bit about some of the advantages as well as the disadvantages you come across.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that there's, it's interesting talking about just like this like physiological advantages that you can read on or get some papers on in terms of, you know, women and our rods and cones being slightly different. And I do get that a lot just from DPs or directors that they sort of have commented that there's a certain sort of acuity it's just different that they've noticed in working with different colorists, and women in particular have some of that. And I think also too, I mean, for me, what I love almost most about my job is like being, you know, working with people and, you know, being able to sort of like welcome people in and do that whole thing. And I do think that, you know, not to be cliche or anything, but I do think women have that knack, you know, have ability to make people kind of like feel comfortable and that sort of thing. On the other reverse side of that, you know, I think it's just, you know, kind of what you started this conversation with a little bit in introduction, which is that yes, there is some representation, but we are sort of still quite far from that. So becoming, you know, going into a technical role and a creative role, that's because they're very married at the same time, especially in a world that's quite dominated by men. It's, I don't know, I've had many experiences, my own lived experiences different from each of you, but you know, it's just interesting to me, like that how often it comes up and how how much is sort of like, you know, things that happen where you're kind of, you recognize that that wouldn't be a conversation if, and it would be a different conversation in the room if you were not there or you were a man. So I think how many times I've been in a room with 6 or 7 men and somebody said, oh, well, a woman is present, you know, I don't want to say that. Or just like the kinds of things or strategies or approaches you use to kind of, you know, make relationships in the industry. A lot of our main clients, DPs, are also, it's also a very male dominated industry. So I think women do different things. We don't have the luxury sometimes of being just like straight up and sort of reaching out and being, you know, kind of trying to network the same way. So I think that to me has been like one of the most noticeable disadvantages. And then seeing other women coming up that, you know, working with or mentoring, you know, that's what I see the most, is just that networking capability. It just seems a little throttled because of the sort of space that we're in, right? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. It's definitely a different experience. And how about you, CJ, in Australia? How do you find it over there? I mean, you and Junbin are both freelance, which I guess is slightly different from working for a company like Andrea does in LA. But you know, do you find advantages, disadvantages over there? You get treated differently because you're a woman?
Yeah, I mean, certainly what Andrea said about people apologizing for what they say around you, and you know, just treating you differently can be challenging, because you just want people to feel at ease and feel comfortable working with you. And it's just a bit icky when it gets to a point where it's certainly like old school agency people and commercials and stuff can be a bit like that. I do find I probably have to, in my experience, prove my technical abilities potentially a little bit more than my male peers, I would say.
Right.
I've just sort of proved, that I understand the tools potentially more so than other colorists. I mean, a lot of the stuff is subconscious bias stuff that it's not always so obvious. You know, someone might just not be a trusting person. But, you know, I've been in situations in the room where I'm the one explaining, like maybe there's a technical issue. And, you know, people, whoever you're trying to explain it to, you know, their eyes dart across to the man in the room. And they just don't trust, you know, the trust isn't there always, I think, because it's not the norm. They're not used to seeing, women in those technical roles. I certainly feel like maybe on the flip side, creatively, sometimes you have people say, well, women have better color receptors and, you know, less likely to have issues with interpreting color and things like that, which I think if you're an experienced colorist, we're all of our eyes are trained and attuned, and it doesn't really come into it. But certainly some people perceive women's creative, like, intuition is there. And like Andrea said, dealing with people, being a people pleaser, you know, we're so used to that as well. But I think being assertive in those, sometimes when there's issues and you know, whether it's technical issues or maybe like financial stuff, producing, you know, really being able, as a freelancer, negotiating costs and things like that. I know females and women that I know in the industry have a harder time sometimes with really just asking for really what they're worth as well. So, but yeah, everyone, I don't know. What do you think, Junbin?
I kind of have the same experience. So when I started, I was literally like the only female colorist in Singapore. So I shared with Sarah that the first few sessions I was at the panel, my hand was on the panel on the mouse, and people would come in and they'll go, oh, so where's the colorist? So it was just unbelievable to them that the girl was the colorist. But that was maybe about 10 years ago, and it's taken time for them to get used to it. And that's the advantage of being the only girl for a long time, because now people are like, oh, have you met the color girl? So my name is not very known, but they know me as the color girl because I'm the only colorist who's female. So that's really useful, I think, just turning it around. But yeah, I get a lot of people saying like, oh, make it sexy. And then they pause and they're like, I'm sorry if that's offensive or, you know, yeah, but I think they're coming around now.
And did you have any any of you have any great mentors when you were first starting out, female mentors, or were you kind of the first? I think CJ, you talked about, I mean, sorry, Junbin, you talked a bit about this, about how you didn't really have anyone because you were the first. So
Yeah. So the company that I joined trained me in color correcting, not grading. So a lot of the aesthetic work I picked up just from anywhere, watching TV. So when I was a lot younger, I skipped school and watched a lot of cooking shows. And it was a great way just to see like the same thing, the same ingredients being filmed, and it looks different in every country, in every production. And I learned that, oh, that's also from the power of color grading. And my mom is an illustrator. So just growing up, I had a lot of drawings and paint around the house, which I think just and somehow it affects how your sense of aesthetics are. Yeah.
yeah, how about you, CJ? Did you have any mentors when you were?
Well, like I said, I was initially self-taught, kind of taught myself everything in the beginning. But when I went and worked at Digital Pictures, I think we had 6 senior colorists at that time, 2 of which were women, which was awesome. But it was really great, to be honest, to work with all, like, to go in and sit with all of them. And you know, like you said, one of the biggest parts of our role is dealing with clients and working the room, and seeing how the different colorists all kind of manage that. Well, yeah, that was awesome to be able to have that chance. But yeah, it was.
Now, here's a question. I didn't prep anyone on this, but what about work-life balance? I mean, I think this is, to be honest, I think this is an issue for men as much, almost as much as for women. But you know, you're stuck in a dark room all day. How do you balance, you know, life and doing that, and family and friendships and everything else that is going on in your life? Anyone can answer. Andrea, how about you go first?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I had a child during the finish of Chappie, which was quite an experience. Just like a real identity crisis for me, actually. But I was really lucky on that film, having have worked with Neil Blomkamp on that feature before, Elysium being that one before, that, you know, I was the collaborator on that, and I was going to do that film, and I happened to be pregnant and there was going to be a moment in time that I was not going to be available, but then after that I would be. So it was really interesting on that. I had the chance to actually, you know, they actually adjusted the schedule so that I could work on that film.
Wow.
But in just a way that allowed me to kind of come in bursts, so I didn't have to like sit at working at it for like a 4-week chunk at the very end. I was able to like work over a period of time on that. And then I, you know, at the time I was in Vancouver, so I came to LA for a couple of months actually to do the sort of mastering and like the different versioning in IMAX and that sort of thing. So I could travel with my son, who was at that time 8 months old. But I you know, I find that honestly, like making friends with the people you work with helps a lot, like becoming, you know, being able to have like, you know, that sort of you know, social time sort of at work, because you are maybe there for 10 or 12 hours a day. And so enjoying the people that you work with is a really big thing for me. It's a huge value that I always sort of look at in terms of like, when I was freelance for a couple of years. So thinking about what studios I was going to work in, and then, you know, now choosing to work in a facility, that's a huge thing for me, is sort of like, is that group of people, because we're going to spend a lot of time together, is that going to work? But I think also it's just like really setting the boundaries. I do a lot of like planning, trying to pre-plan like how things are going to work out, or like what I think I should be focusing on, you know, in that week, and sort of then like lay that out in terms of, you know, I think we should do this, and this, what do you think? And that'll help me to kind of manage the schedule a little bit more, so I don't get stuck, you know, staying, you know, super late. I do typically not work on weekends, which has not been that common lately, just because of the pandemic and everything. Sort of like boundaries are hard to manage in some way, but to me, yeah, it's sort of setting that. It's like on Friday night, I'm always in my job mentally, but I typically sort of just like, no, I don't work on the weekend, you know. So I think it's sort of setting that up, because it is the only time, you know, I have a little guy and a husband and like, you know, a dog, and I'd like to spend time with my friends. And That's what makes me good at what I do as well. So I feel like keeping that value and keeping those things sort of like precious and important to you helps you actually be better as a colorist. You know what I mean? So yeah. that's my solution.
Yeah, and I find in my experience, you know, people really respect when you set your boundaries, when you say, no, I won't go past 6 p.m., 7 p.m. this day. These are my boundaries. And, you know, boundaries can be broken, they can be shifted and moved, but if you've got those set, I think for the most part, people are pretty good. Well, you know, at least for me, there's always going to be the odd day or weekend that you end up, you know, going above and beyond. But I think generally the industry is getting better at establishing boundaries and what, yeah, I don't obviously have a family, but for me, actually working remotely from home, I've been way firmer about my boundaries because I don't have a separation. I basically shut the door to my home office and I say, I'm done. I'm out. Like I'm not going back in there until Monday, you know.
Yeah.
Because you have to when you have less I think when you have less separating you from your desk, I think, yeah, for your own sanity. And I think we all perform better and we do better work when we're refreshed and we've had a break as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, it's the main reason why I went freelance, because I'm not a mom or I don't have a family, but I do have parents to take care of. And I think freelancing helps me manage my own time. So I set my own boundaries. I don't allow things to go over. If they do, I get paid. It's not a fixed salary, so that's good. And yeah, I think just being in this industry for so long, most of my friends are in the industry, so it's kind of nice. You work with them, but then the boundaries kind of blur as well. But I do try to maintain like time off and just screen time away from screens, just read a book or just rest my eyes. I think that's really important.
Exactly. Okay, real quick, Andrea, I've been asked to ask you about circadian rhythms. Apparently that's
Oh, it's my favorite topic. So when the pandemic
You've got like
started,
2 minutes, so you've got to be really quick.
Okay. Should have prepared me for this, Sarah. No, I'm a terrible sleeper. And I've been a terrible sleeper for a long time. And recently, in the last year or so, I've been trying to get like help with this. And so I was talking to an acupuncturist earlier in the year that was asking me like, okay, well, when did this all start? Thinking like, oh, she's a mom, like 6 years, she probably can't sleep. And I'm like, here's the thing. When I had my kid, I was like, what is everybody talking about? Like I wake up 5 times a day anyway. So it wasn't like a big deal for me to have a small child wake me up because I was already awake. And so it made me realize that I had this issue. So they were like, well, how long have you been doing your job for? And I was like, oh, I guess, 11 years. Like, is that around the same time you started having sleep issues? I was like, yeah, probably. And the big thing that came up there was that, we spend a lot of time in the dark. And so, it's basically like, you spend like 10, 12 hours a day potentially in a dark box, like a black box. And yes, you're like staring at an image, but then it's like blue light all day. And so when you get home, I don't know if you ladies all experience this, but I have that where I'm just like, boom, I'm on. Like I get home and it's 9 o'clock and I'm like, I'm ready to party. And I have a really hard time falling asleep. And so it's like, that's when my body thinks it's daytime. And so I've been working on through the pandemic because we've been like more in control of our schedules, or we haven't been going in, although I did go in quite a bit over the summer. I started to, I got a circadian optics light so that whenever I'm not doing color critical work or I'm like looking for files or sitting around, I like turn it on my desk. And then I also like wake up with the sun on purpose to like get sunlight in my eyes. And then if I can go outside or I'm outside at the time when the sun is setting, I like have the sun go down and like I darken my whole space at night. And that has made like a huge difference. So it's, just for all the colorists out there, when you sit in a
great.
black
That's
box
great advice for
all day
everyone.
long,
Colorist or not,
don't
yeah.
forget,
Yeah.
your rhythms are totally off. Your body is like producing a hormone that's basically saying you should be falling asleep right now. You should be falling asleep right now. So if you drink a lot of coffee because you're like, you hit that wall at like 2 or 3 p.m., that's why. So I was like, oh, it's just like made me just, it was a huge eye opener to realize if I just change these things. I also like got the blue blocking glasses and all of those. But it's hard to wear those. I don't wear glasses, so it's weird to just like put those on. And also obviously wouldn't do it at work because they would affect everything. So I've tried it at night, but I'm also just like, I'm not in the habit of wearing them. So that aspect was a hard one to do. But I did, the sleep diet with like the light in my eyes, and it really made a big difference. So, yeah.
That's great to know. Okay, I think we have to go to our quiz, I think.
Okay.
So thank you all so much. It seemed like this time went really quickly, so let's do the quiz. Am I supposed to ask the questions? Anyone from the thing, or is someone else asking?
Yeah, why not? You can read them out. I think
Okay, sure.
screen sharing, for those that haven't done it yet, you need to go to slido.com, and the quiz is Colorist Mixer. It's going to be like that for the whole session. And yeah, we'll just let the numbers rise up, Sarah, and then you can kick it off.
Okay.
And with where CSI has put in a Blackmagic multi-dock. So it's a Thunderbolt device that will allow you to put up to 4 SSDs into a storage array and connect them direct to the computer.
Okay. Do you want me to go? Do we have enough people? Right. Do you want me to ask the first question? Are we waiting?
Yeah, go ahead. It looks like it's flattened out there.
Okay. Okay, question 1. Which of these 2020 HPA award nominees was not graded by a woman? Is it A, Jojo Rabbit, B, Mulan, or C, Joker?
That's a good one.
Everybody's frantically looking up.
Get off
News
my
now. So the quizzes are timed as well. So the first answers gain extra points.
Whoa.
Ooh.
What? Interesting.
Wow.
Very interesting.
Okay, and the
correct answer is?
answer is Jojo Rabbit. Mulan was,
Tim Stippen.
yeah, Mulan and Joker were both graded by women, and the winner was Joker, Jill Bogdanowicz. So it's great that so many people, HPA awards, female colorists. Okay, can you name the I'm kind of giving away the answer to this one.
Hey, now you have.
And 100% for this one, hopefully. A, Benson, B, Bogdanowicz, or C, Nolan. Screwed that one up.
I mean, it's the Jeopardy question. You have the 2 successful bing.
Yeah.
You could be doing a double bluff.
That's true.
Yes.
All right.
Well done.
Yeah.
The answer is Corinne and Jill Bogdanowicz.
With
Okay,
a famous father too.
And they have a famous PhD color scientist father,
Yeah.
Mitch. So that helped. Okay, question 3. Which movie graded by a woman won the HPA award in 2019 for color grading? Was it
Trick
First Man,
question.
First Man, Roma, or Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse?
I like these.
Well, the great thing, as I say, the great thing is it goes to show that, you know, women are getting some awards here for color grading. So that's great. Ooh. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Natasha Linney.
Yep.
She also did First Man, so that's why I thought it was a trick question.
Right, that was a slight trick question.
Trick question. Like if you're paying attention.
So it looks like we do have a winner in a pretty quick time
Wow.
too.
Wow, someone was pretty quick there with the answers.
Yeah.
That's great.
Very good.
Mhm, mhm.
So somebody will contact you to get your details from tech support in the chat room, and we will send you the multi-doc. Now, what's next? Who's moderating? Am I moderating? So there should be breakout rooms coming up anytime soon. And the breakout rooms will be one for CSI APAC. There will be an ICA tips and tricks, the party room, and the colorist chat room.